All right. Hello all, and welcome again to another CONVerged EFFECT industry webinar. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday. This month, we're focusing on the banking industry and an ecosystem of businesses around the banking industry, and there is a lot to talk about here. I'm really excited about, we posted about it a little bit on LinkedIn. There's just a huge opportunity to drive win-win scenarios for you and your customer, uncovering CapEx potential while helping them drive towards innovative new products and services. Tremendous amount of opportunity, and we can't wait to dig in. My name is Devin Williams, and I'll be your host for today. For those of you that are new to CNSG's CONVerged EFFECT initiative, each month we focus on a particular industry driven by data which suggests what time of the year each industry is primed to make technology decisions. To think about where they're going, what they need, the gaps, the business outcomes, etc. So there's significant opportunity for us to deliver value to our customers as those agnostic technology consultants we've been talking so much about, who deliver prescriptive solutions that are based on business outcomes. If you want to discover more about the challenge your customers face with procuring technology today and better understand why as a CNSG agent you're in a unique position to deliver value to your customers, I would encourage you to check out the Calling Our Shot webinar from January, where we as CNSG rolled out the CONVerged EFFECT initiative and talked about the why behind the CONVerged EFFECT. That video and webinar recording can be found on YouTube, our soon-to-go-live partner portal, or drop us an email anytime at marketing@cnsg.com. So as part of the CONVerged EFFECT initiative, we deliver industry-specific tools and resources designed to help you with each phase of the sales cycle, such as new meeting generation, email templates, customer-facing presentations, supplier resources, collateral, interviews, cheat sheets, and so much more. So be on the lookout for the follow-up email post-webinar for those of you attending live, and those links will go out to you with all that information, and soon all this content will be found on our new partner portal. So with the CONVerged EFFECT initiative, we begin our enablement at a business executive's line of sight. This type of knowledge is how you earn your seat at the table to discuss business outcomes, not just specific technologies. So first today, we'll begin by identifying the larger macro trends at play that are affecting the banking industry. We like to look at both immediate as well as initiatives slated for 3 to 5 years out. So whether bleeding edge or ultra conservative, you can always align with your customer, regardless of where they are in that journey. And not just now, but you can also align yourself strategically into the future. Maybe you missed the boat on a current initiative, but by having that business acumen discussion, talking about strategies that are likely on the roadmap 3+ years from now, you can align yourself strategically and to future business. So after that, we'll start to examine from a technology standpoint how the industry is looking to take advantage of the current economic climate that we'll discuss. And we'll explore the technical challenge, the specific challenges that are preventing companies from really turning these economic and business level trends into opportunities. And finally, we'll discuss some specific solutions and strategies that you can use to monetize what we've covered here today before we wrap up with some Q&A with myself and Dave Hopper, our Senior Director of Solutions Engineering. So what are the business owners and executives thinking about most in the banking industry today? And I think we've gotten some tremendous feedback on the CONVerged EFFECT initiative in the webinars, and many of you absolutely love this particular part of the program. And again, this is where we focus on those high-level business trends that are happening, and then we work backwards into what are the technology trends and challenges that we as consultants should be looking to address to help our customers turn these things, these trends, into opportunities. So what are those trends? Based on significant data and a lot of validated feedback from people in the industry, our biggest threats and opportunities to executives right now are as follows. Branches are getting less and less traffic, and they will continue to shrink in size and investment. Why? because everything's going digital, and the buyer today is different than it was 10 years ago. Buyers have different expectations, tools at their disposal, service options, etc. So if you've been tuning in over the past few months to the CONVerged EFFECT industry webinars, some of these trends should be familiar. This changing buyer and digitization dynamic is persistent in almost every industry that we've discussed, but especially those which conduct transactional business like banking. So what logically occurs when digital becomes your new face of the business versus brick and mortar? Resources that have been architected and dedicated to brick and mortar services now have to be shifted or altogether replaced to support digital services. Customer experience is more important than ever today in banking. You have fickle customers, low brand loyalty across the industry, which is relatively new for the industry, plus fewer interactions with customers and more competition than ever thanks to fintechs. Again, these different variables create a situation where customer experience is truly more important than ever to these institutions and companies. The old way of doing things doesn't make as much sense anymore. It's time to make updates and overhauls. And last but definitely not least, with everything going digital, my focus as a bank shifts from physical security to cyber and customer data security. So we'll talk a lot about cybersecurity today. So on to the technology trends, which have direct correlation to the business trends we just highlighted. It should be no surprise based on the last slide that we start with the drive to digital, specifically mobile. The data is startling as it relates to mobile banking and what this shift is demanding of companies in the industry. One such example of pressure this shift to mobile is putting on the industry is for banks to refresh and align their systems and processes to support the mobile and digital service demand, as we alluded to in the last slide. How do we as a business also begin to recruit and source talent specific to mobile and digital? That you probably weren't thinking about that. So not only do we need to take a fresh look at our processes and our technology so that we can go digital and focus on mobile, but we also need to take a fresh look at our people. The future workforce in banking is expected to also be more diverse than ever. In addition to permanent employees and contractors, most analysts think that this workforce in banking will include freelancers who work with multiple banks, fintech hackathoners to generate novel solutions, and even robots eventually that will be working alongside these freelance and remote workers. As part of this digital and customer-centric transformation, banks will likely need to reorient existing workforces to be collaborative and inclusive, especially for the contract and remote workers we just talked about. And again, with fewer in-person interactions with customers, customer service when problems do occur, regardless of the channel where they're generated from, in-store, online, mobile, etc. This experience becomes increasingly important as customers become less loyal, competition increases, and services go digital. So when something happens, we need to make sure that our customer service is up to par, if not better than the competition. However, with the drive to digital and mobile also comes newfound insight opportunity into our customers' needs and habits. So this gives us as a banking institution an opportunity to look at the cloud during our refresh, especially for initiatives around big data, analytics, and business intelligence. And again, cybersecurity is literally top of mind to the supervising authority for all U.S. banks in 2018, the Department of Treasury. So if they've blasted out publicly, banks beware, this is our number one focus in 2018, you can imagine that the banking institutions, CIOs, CISOs, CEOs are going to follow suit. So here's some interesting data from PwC. I wanted to try something a little bit new in this CONVerged EFFECT webinar. I think you can use this information to help start a conversation with your customer. That could lead a lot of different ways, but just get the conversation started positioning yourself as an executive consultant, business level consultant, and especially this will really resonate with the key influencer and economic buyer personas. If you're not familiar with that, take a look at the Blueprint methodology and support that we've got available, the Blueprint program, where we talk about personas. If you have any interest in that, let me know as a tangent. So I'm going to role play a few conversation starters based on the data that we've shown here. So feel free to use this separately or as one complete conversation, starting at the top left. Everyone in your industry says innovation is critical in 2018, Mr. or Mrs. Banking customer, especially with the move to digital. But despite that, PwC says that most banks don't feel prepared for innovation based on a recent survey. Where do you stand on this, and what's keeping you from innovating? A second conversation starter. More than half of PwC respondents in a recent survey said a customer-centric model is very important, especially in today's climate. But only 17% reportedly feel prepared to support such a customer-centric model. What's your definition of a customer-centric model, Mr. Customer? And where does that sit in your stack of priorities for 2018? And finally, I saved the best for last, in my opinion. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, I'd like to tell you about a cool medical phrase I heard recently. It's cool because it actually doesn't apply to medical at all. It applies to banking technology. The quote goes, fewer heart transplants and more bypasses. What do I mean? It means that a lot of banks are looking at their need to innovate, to digitize, and refresh as a daunting, complete overhaul type project. It's scary, but it doesn't mean you have to undergo a full transplant of your core. Instead, many banks are having a lot of success moving certain aspects of their business and needs to the cloud, such as solutions and technology focused on customer engagement or analytics. They're one example of a bypass over a transplant. Thus, meeting the need to innovate and focus on the customer without the need to rip and replace everything overnight. So I'd love to help you uncover where your bypass opportunities might be. We then insert ourselves as consultants to act on behalf of the customer to go out and seek these bypass opportunities, i.e., low-hanging fruit for refresh or innovation. And then we bring back proactively and prescriptively solutions to these executives that we met with on the transplant versus bypass discussion, stemming directly from that conversation. So if any of you are interested in role-playing that further, please hit me up offline. Be more than happy to go through it. But I think these are some great opportunities for discussion starters for you. Okay, so now let's get into the challenges. And we'll start by focusing on the trends that the majority of the industry are undertaking and prioritizing this year in 2018. Security is numero uno, hands down, across the board for fintech, finance, and banking in particular. We're getting further and further over our proverbial technology skis, quote unquote, across many industries as new technologies and customer demand surface daily. That pain and uncertainty is felt more in heavily regulated industries than anywhere else, especially banking, so it makes sense. The growth of mobile, drive to digital, blockchain, IoT, all of these trends grow the attack surface of these banks and make them easier targets. To make matters worse, workforce demand is and will continue to far outweigh supply in cybersecurity and information security. It's a costly battle to fight, keeping an in-house security team. It's only going to get more challenging to find and retain this type of talent over the next 5 years. Just look at some of these stats from left to right on the bottom. Everyone is experiencing attacks and threats. Everyone is spending money on it. And finance and banking industries are the most targeted. You must get comfortable at a minimum proposing no obligation enablement sessions for your customers around security. Even if you're not comfortable having the discussion, we have a ton of fantastic resources that can do it on your behalf. Again, you have many different types of solutions and resources at your disposal. So don't think for a second that the ability to bring a no obligation, agnostic update on what's the latest and greatest in security and what solutions are available to your customers is not of value to them, because it absolutely is. And you have every right to propose that type of discussion and value add enablement. Get the discussion booked. We've got a team of resources that can help you through discovery and align the right next steps and solutions for your customer. We should not shy away here. So what are some of the solutions specifically that we would likely propose based on the customer's specific needs and their security journey and where they're at? CenturyLink and Masergy at the top are two suppliers we have who excel in some of the attack areas we just discussed. Many times they're engaged post-attack because we're not thinking proactively. We're buying the insurance at a higher premium rate after we've already had the flood damage, as opposed to getting the insurance ahead of time. Despite that, they're very, very talented at mitigating, identifying DDoS attacks, identifying root cause. They have excellent services and experience helping banks in particular protect themselves proactively and their customers, especially, again, against DDoS, web, and branch attacks. Our friends at Expedient and Rackspace, for good reason, have a specific focus on banking, retail, and e-commerce. A lot of overlap, technologically speaking, between those three sectors. Due to this focus, both companies can deliver compliant and secure environments for your banking customers, so they don't have to worry about their compute services from a security or a compliance standpoint. And finally, we have excellent partnerships with TruShield and CyberHat, who can assess, proactively monitor, detect, and remediate security and compliance issues. I would encourage you to look at banking customers without a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, or existing security organizations as top targets. There's a real business justification for outsourcing what is a very expensive security resource, who's typically understaffed to begin with, especially when image is everything, like in banking, and you're so highly regulated. Frankly, to be honest, I think SOC as a service, or SOCAS, is a huge untapped opportunity for us in the indirect channel. Check out, if you've got about 10, 15 minutes, check out the CONVerged EFFECT interview I did with Patrick from CyberHat, their EVP of Sales and North American Operations. On this topic in particular, we did it last week, should be up and available. But especially in the mid-enterprise and down market, the need and justification for SOC as a service is absolutely undeniable. It gets harder and harder to find and to keep information security talent, as I've mentioned. Meanwhile, the need for those resources grows with each passing day. So for a fraction of the cost of what it would take to build your own in-house security organization, you can have true 24/7, 365 security operations center for your business. Duh, it's a no-brainer. Let's get these conversations going. And if we get to a point where we have a customer asking us about cost and business justification, we know we've got a fantastic opportunity to win the business. So next up, immediate focus besides security and compliance, mobile, multi-channel, omni-channel, mobile banking. So the big push to mobile banking and services is a rat race that every bank must compete in right now or get left behind. I mean, you have to be playing and spending here. Everyone is spending in mobile this year, not mobile devices for their employees, to be clear. We're talking about mobile banking capabilities, services delivered on a mobile platform. That includes back-end technology, which we'll discuss shortly, but also visibility, performance, security, and compliance of those applications and channels as well. So here's some great data compiled by our friends at Flexential from sources such as Forbes, the Financial Brand, NG Data, and others. The data says, everyone expects mobile account origination, i.e. where accounts are created, to surpass all traditional methods in the next few years. Online services are far more profitable. The majority of the U.S. already uses digital banking. And millennials already do most of their financial planning online, paving a way for the future. But with this drive to mobile, there's some key things to consider besides security, which we just talked about. One is, am I set up to capture data and insight from my digital customers? It's one thing to deploy a digital multi-channel omni-channel mobile strategy. It's another thing to do so and not take the opportunity to gather data and insight on your customer while executing that strategy. You're missing a huge opportunity. Secondly, do I have a model set up to provide superb customer experience in the digital channel? I've been investing in brick and mortar customer support and services for the entire existence of my company, and now I'm pivoting on a dime to deliver digital services. Am I also transitioning my focus of customer support from brick and mortar to the digital channel? Fortunately, again, we have an abundance of solutions available that can help customers along this omni-channel digital mobile journey. Specifically, Eagle Dream Technologies for a mobile application builds or integration between systems. This is their bread and butter. Go to their website. It's all they talk about. It's what they do best. They build mobile applications, especially for financials, and they've got lots of case studies to back it up. So if a customer needs help with planning, architecting, developing, or managing a mobile banking application, look no further. We should be getting Eagle Dream involved in a conversation. Next, we move into the back end and some of the other areas besides the actual mobile application development. There's Expedient, who has extensive experience managing banking critical services such as mobile banking applications. They create a secure and compliant environment, as we discussed. They give the client visibility into the environment and can deliver true DR as a service down to the network component, not just the compute. It's a differentiator to make sure the service never goes down and there's never a data loss due to disaster. And data loss, I might add, is as big a concern as data theft to these companies. So don't just go out and crush the security conversation and crush the cybersecurity threats that you have in your environment, and then forget about protecting from data loss, because you're only looking at one side of the coin. We also have companies at the bottom like RingCentral and Nextiva who can deliver seamless experiences to your customers. Mobile banking, text or chat support, video banking, delivering real-time communication and improved collaboration. And remember that some of the data on customers in banking and their lack of loyalty, right? Leverage Five9 to deliver the call center experience your customers demand when they do need to talk with someone at the bank, but they're not engaged in brick and mortar services. Excuse me. Our next challenge is technology resources at most banks are becoming difficult to manage. You've got a hodgepodge of systems, platforms, software, and tools. Much of them are legacy infrastructure. And what's unfortunate about legacy infrastructure is it's incredibly expensive to maintain. It demands significant resources and capital to ensure that that legacy infrastructure runs and operates smoothly. So as such, modernizing core operating infrastructure is an obvious priority and is our third immediate priority: security, mobile banking, and modernization of back-end infrastructure. This was modernization in particular was ranked as the most important information technology initiative trend for nearly a quarter of global banking respondents in a 2017 Enterprise Insights survey. This is top of mind, it's immediate, and we want to focus again, not on the transplants, but the opportunities for the bypasses. So whether we like it or not, as a banking institution, we have to do something here. With the push to mobile and the constant compliance and security pressure, I can't continue to spend 80% of my IT dollars on legacy systems maintenance. I have to find the low-hanging fruit, the bypasses, areas I can innovate and move the needle quickly within my existing budget constraints. So to that end, what are financial firms looking to get from the cloud? An obvious choice when thinking about modernizing or refreshing back-end infrastructure. There's some excellent data on what's happening in banking, which was conscripted by and provided to us by Windstream Enterprise. This data can be requested directly from your channel manager, the Windstream team, or soon this will be available on the Partner Resource Center. So for both infrastructure on the left, the data center upgrades, infrastructure, as well as cloud SaaS applications, they have the same top 5 drivers, a little bit change in percentage on each side, but the same top 5 drivers: security, process, cost, customer experience, and compliance. Let me use cloud to address immediate needs that are also bypass opportunities, not requiring entire overhauls. How can I make a change quickly within my existing cost restraints that helps me hit on multiple checkboxes, refreshing infrastructure, driving towards things like a customer-centric model, innovating, driving towards mobile, etc. And guess what? We have multitudes of world-class cloud solutions across all of the areas listed. Frankly, out of everything we've talked about and will talk about, this is probably the area where we have the largest abundance of solutions and providers available to us. So many options to choose from, but the standouts based on experience in the industry are as follows. Green Cloud for DR, VDI, and infrastructure as a service in the banking industry, fantastic, bar none. Rackspace has great experience, case studies like Metro Bank, where they delivered on performance improvement, security, and cost reduction needs for a client. They also have a lot of experience migrating banks to the cloud in different workloads. Engage Rackspace to help them help you find bypass opportunities within your customer. And they have an entire practice focused on big data, which back to the finding insight while driving to the omni-channel, the digital, the mobile solution and service is incredibly important. Call Tower has specific experience delivering business outcomes for the banking industry, like secure and compliant credit card transactions. Evolve IP is another one, which we're not doing them a service by just mentioning MDM and VDI, but they've got a lot of experience specifically with mobile and freelance workers, which we talked about. Banks are starting to think more about how they support the next generation of workers, which will be mobile and freelance. But Evolve IP can do so much more and has a lot of great experience, again, in the banking industry. NeoCloud has a banking-specific core bundle, which targets a lot of the typical low-hanging cloud opportunities we see with banks. So bundle all of this together, support, implementation, training is all included for a flat MRC. And finally, Windstream, who we talked about, helped compile a lot of this great information that we're talking about and referencing today. But they did a huge $19.4 million, I'll say that again, $19.4 million 5-year TCV deal in Q4 last year with one of our sub-agents, doing exactly what we're talking about in this presentation. Updating a bank who had lots of disparate technology due to mergers in their instance, and updating it with customized and prescriptive solutions based on location and need. Fantastic win. Kathy and team would be more than happy to talk your ear off about it, as they should. So if you want to learn more and engage on some of that and see if you can replicate that type of win in your business and in your base, engage us. We'd love to get the conversation started. Okay, the last challenge we'll address today for banking is the challenge to keep up with all these needs to innovate while not losing sight of the customer, who, by the way, has only become more demanding in today's always-on instant gratification world. It's a real challenge to balance customer centricity while also driving innovation without blowing out all of your expenses and eating away at margins and revenue, et cetera. So here's some data that's just really, really telling. Customers are more willing to change banks than ever before. There's less brand loyalty in the banking sector than ever before. And technology is being put over personal relationships in banking, arguably the first time ever in the industry. Banking was built on brick and mortar services, greeting customers with a smile and providing excellent customer service, knowing their name when they walked in. That time has been completely put on its head. And now that loyalty is gone and the drive towards digital online services is what permeates the industry. And some would say it's a sad thing that banking is becoming, these are some quotes I saw a lot when doing research, banking is becoming, quote unquote, less human. I would argue that it's really just, banking is really just adapting to digital consumption. It's an inevitable evolution and shift. So for these reasons that we discussed here, big data analytics, call center services, chatbots, mobile applications, integrated CRM, branch services are all expected to see increased investments in 2018 from the banking industry. So how can we help our customers meet the demand for continued, if not improved, customer centricity? 5.9 we brought up previously, specifically for customer experience, inbound and outbound campaigns. Nextiva, with their NextOS platform, can tie all of your channels and customer interactions together into a single pane of glass to make sure you're never missing a piece of the discussion and things that are really important to today's customers when logging in or calling into a customer support line. I want a customer support rep to immediately have all my information, my history, et cetera. Nextiva and the NextOS platform can deliver that for your banking customers. Rackspace, we alluded to around the big data piece, they can help properly and cost-effectively leverage big data for your customers so they can get that insight into what their customers are doing and how their customers are interacting with their brand. And then performance both at large and in the branch. Masergy has multiple banking case studies where they engineered a network specifically to handle banking, unique banking needs. Some of the bursting and some of the other seasonality challenges that were happening. Flexential is great. They've done a lot of research in this space. But what's really interesting, their forward-thinking approach with the edge data center concept that's really gaining steam. As the centralized service delivery models are challenged by mobile and online services that we've talked about, right, putting a lot of pressure on the centralized data center, the hub and spoke model, Flexential has excellent experience delivering performance and CapEx savings through edge computing and specifically in the banking industry. Just ask your customer if they've looked into edge data center concepts and get their feedback. That's all you have to ask. Mr. Customer, we talked a lot about cloud. We talked a lot about your data centers, your compute, all that fun stuff. Just question, have you guys looked into the edge data center concept? And just tell me about that. Get their feedback. Based on their response, offer to introduce them to a pioneer in the space, Flexential, who has a lot of banking deployments and can talk about how the edge computing concept can really help your banking customers. All right, and finally, as a bonus from last month where we talked about reimagining the storefront in the retail space, a lot of overlap, a lot of synergy, so we wanted to highlight some of the same suppliers in that space. So the reimagining storefront play holds true for the branch banking play. The branch isn't dead, but growth and focus around the branch is shrinking, as we saw on that very first slide from today. So companies are looking at how to cost-effectively service customers who still search out brick-and-mortar experiences. One example that we have here, Cato, can help you consolidate branch infrastructure into a single appliance while also delivering security and performance of those mission-critical edge services for cost savings and performance improvements. We, CNSG, through our network of carrier services, can also bring in lower quality and lower cost connectivity to help reduce the cost per meg as the demands for data at the edge increase. Microspace is another great partner. They're here in Raleigh. They have several published case studies where they were able to stand up connectivity in new and hard-to-reach places, and they were also able to create confidence in the customer's critical edge services when they moved their LTE service, which was a Band-Aid solution initially, to a backup or a failover solution when the time was right. And ComCore. And anybody with a storefront, with a branch, with a brick and mortar should really be looking at and considering this provider. They provide solutions purpose-built for the branch, from telecom, Wi-Fi, music, surveillance, etc. All of this in a managed MRC offering. Perfect for folks that are looking at customers, banks that are looking at ways to continue to innovate in the branch, but do so cost-effectively. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Q&A. Because this is being recorded, we want to keep the background noise to a minimum. So what we'd ask is if you'd like to submit a question, please do so through the chat window, which is found at the very bottom left corner with the participant image there right next to that, the chat window. And at this time, Dave or I will be happy to answer any of your questions. Okay. Well, we don't have any questions submitted, which is a first for us, and we're seeing, there's one that popped in here, of course. How are banks handling merging networks when they grow through acquisitions? How are banks handling merging networks when they grow through acquisition? Dave, I know you saw, we alluded a little bit to that Windstream deal, which talked a lot about the merger and acquisition play. I know you were a big part of that deal. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how we position, how we win when we hear about that merger play that's a big thing happening in banking?
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually actively involved in a couple of those deals like that right now on a little bit smaller scale than that one that we did with the Windstream. But, I mean, at the end of the day, and really with a lot of it, same with many other networks as we're looking at this, a very good play in that scenario is going to be SD-WAN, especially if they have a forward-looking, hey, yes, we just acquired one bank today with 4 branches, but over the next 2 years, we plan to grow to 20 more branches via merger acquisition. And then really it's the SD-WAN piece is how we've positioned that, because now you're not tied to a specific carrier in that instance, where footprints may be different as you acquire. They have different contracts in place, but a good SD-WAN strategy absolutely helps solve that as far as starting to bring in different networks that may have different contracts in place and things of that nature. So to be able to build that out, give them control, so not only are they getting ability to merge in new networks, new sites, but all the other benefits you get out of the SD-WAN as far as some of the analytics, the control, application performance, reliability, security, and that's a big focus too, to tie that in as you start looking at SD-WAN. And doing that is you got to tie it back into their cybersecurity policies, where there's costs on gateways and things of that nature. So you got to keep, that's really a dual conversation. We start looking at that is not only the SD-WAN or wide area network piece, but then also how that impacts their cybersecurity posture.
Dave, that's great feedback, great answer. I mean, the SD-WAN component, I think it really can be a connective tissue between a lot of different moves and plays and initiatives. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and that is a central piece. So this one that we get a lot of times, and I wanted to make sure that we brought it up, is if a bank doesn't have a CISO or a security team, who should we speak to immediately about a security opportunity? You go to the VP of IT, go to the CIO. I mean, you want to have that very high level, get buy-in that, hey, I'm a value add. I have a ton of vetted, proven solution providers in the security space. I've delivered business justification for SOC as a service to companies just like you. I would love your buy-in, Mr. Economic Buyer, CIO, VP of IT, Director of IT. I would love your buy-in to go meet with your teams and have a no-obligation discussion on what's happening, what's the latest and greatest in the security space, and let's see where the conversation takes us. Go nail down that conversation immediately. Again, that no-obligation enablement, it's very unique versus what they're typically getting hit up with, which are vendor-specific enablement opportunities, right? They might get hit up by one, two, or all of our security vendors, but those security vendors are not saying, hey, I can deliver an agnostic enablement. Instead, it's, I've got a very specific solution. Here's what it can do. Here's how we are better. You've got a unique opportunity to be different out of all of that noise and deliver that agnostic enablement that's truly no obligation. If you think one of these things makes a lot of sense, let's you and I step away after the enablement session. Let's work collaboratively together on how we go attack this opportunity. That's a conversation for you and your customer. Okay, another question. Does anyone have any commentary around the risks banks have with more electronic payments and preventing fraud around those transactions? So Dave, I can speak at a high level to that. Any particulars that you want to dig in on how we can actually protect, secure as more and more electronic payments are being processed, things like that?
So some of that, and I don't have a real in-depth knowledge on that, but one of the things I know, and we've talked with CyberHat or TruShield or some of the cybersecurity folks, is not only do they look at certain threats and things of that nature, but also behavior analytics, right, and what may seem to be fraud and things of that nature. So, and those come into play a lot of times why you need more of the SOC as a service, where that's a huge help as they're proactively in reading and monitoring logs, because whether that fraud could be external or internal, the SIMs out there, or SIEM, and all the data collection tools, can collect all that data, but you got to have people that can interpret that data. So that's where it becomes, a big piece with, whether it's Masergy, CenturyLink, CyberHat, those folks that do the management, detection, and remediation, is not just the tools, but actually the people to interpret and see that in that behavioral analytics and be able to respond to that and digging into that.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. You saved the day a little bit there with that one. But, the other things that really come to mind that we need to think about is AI, as part of what Dave just talked about, is becoming more and more prevalent as part of what these SOC as a service and SIM and security providers are using, because previously you have behavioral experts, as Dave's alluding to, that help identify trends. They create algorithms around what could possibly be a fraud transaction. Well, now you have all this historical data that's being crunched by AI, and that's being used as opposed to the human interface component. So if you're not leveraging AI or some sort of SOC as a service as a customer, you likely are investing heavily in people to identify and to try and protect specifically against fraud. Other things that come up a lot around fraud are just, in general, securing the periphery of the enterprise. And what I mean by that are mobile contract workers, people that are not working in a dedicated office with protected firewalling, leveraging single sign-on and authentication technologies across the enterprise, right? NeoCloud, we talked about that cloud bundle. Everything that they talk about has built-in encryption, single sign-on, multi-authentication. So all of those different technologies come into play where we start talking about fraud. That's a great question. I'm so glad somebody brought it up. Thank you. If we bring up blockchain or crypto with a customer, should we present it as a threat or as an added benefit for the bank from a security standpoint? So it's interesting. banks aren't really thinking about crypto or blockchain from a security standpoint yet. They're really just trying to figure out how big of a threat, where's this industry headed, what's happening, right? What I found in some of the diligence that we were doing in the creation of this presentation is a lot of banks they think blockchain is inevitably going to become part of what they do day to day, where they're storing their records. Basically, most folks are in agreement that it's very likely that blockchain will become the record for banking in the future. Not yet. It's going to be an incredibly painful overhaul process to get there. And that goes back to the transplant versus bypass discussion. Because of the looming crypto and blockchain technology, a lot of banks, instead of doing a full press overhaul, because what they're thinking is, if I do a full press overhaul now, in 3 to 5 years, I'm probably going to have to do another one to account for crypto or blockchain. So instead of doing the full transplant now, let me focus on bypass opportunities like customer insight, big data, customer experience, cloud for security and performance. Let me focus on those types of things as low-hanging fruit, because crypto and blockchain are kind of out there and pending. So great question. I think instead, don't be afraid of it by any means, but ask the customer. Obviously, crypto and blockchain has probably disrupted or maneuvered what was your 5-year plan, last year or the past year or two. How has it changed it? What are you now focusing on immediately and long term because of the introduction of blockchain? I think that would be a great discussion, and frankly, I think the customer would be impressed by your acumen. Okay, well, some great questions coming in at the end. Thank you so much, folks. I missed a couple of those. Let me make sure we got them all. Okay, well, thank you all for participating. Next month, we've got hospitality, so thank you all again for your time today. Don't be a stranger. We look forward to hearing about your success. Be sure to tune in next month, Wednesday, July 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, July 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern, where we will cover hospitality industry. And frankly, this has been one of the most highly anticipated webinars yet, based on the feedback and the requests we've gotten from our partners and our suppliers. A lot of focus around this industry. We're also, a lot of folks see a little bit of a lull in business with the summer, vacations, et cetera. Not in the hospitality industry. It's all hands on deck. They're thinking about technology. Now's the time. So hopefully hospitality and our focus can inject a little bit of additional revenue for you in some of the traditionally down summer months. Either way, we hope you're having a great summer, just begun. Thank you so much from the entire CNSG team, and happy selling.